screen here.
Great. Thank you very much, Joe. Really appreciate having me here. I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen and then move you guys out of there. All right. So, as Joe mentioned, a couple things. I'm program manager here at the Puget Sound Regional Council. I run our household travel survey program, and I'm going to dive a little bit into this. Let's see, can I advance? Give me 1 second, okay? All right, so I'm going to divide up our time into these three general sections. I think everybody in the room seems to have some recognition or knowledge about surveys in general. I'm going to give you a specific intro into our survey at PSRC. And then I'm going to get into why did we go down the path that we did. As Joe alluded, there are many different flavors of it. So PSRC's is one flavor. And there are others that I think he's kind of looking into. And so specific to us, the reasons why we're doing it, and also how we're using this data for modeling and non-modeling purposes. Given the theme of this morning, I think everybody's required to have this chart, even though we didn't coordinate. We've had quite a long history of doing various types of travel studies. They were not all surveys, and they were definitely not all household surveys. But we've been kind of doing this for more than 50 years. It's only in the most recent years, since 2017, that we've been doing these more frequent snapshots. The first three waves, the 2017, 2019, 2021, were kind of considered a pilot. We didn't really know what we were doing exactly. We had to kind of do a lot of compensation afterwards in terms of thinking about things that we didn't think ahead for, like kind of the data schema, how do we manage things. And then I think by the end of that, especially because of having COVID in 2020, right in the middle of that period, we kind of recognized the value for our agency to kind of keep going. So currently, we have an 8-year, 4-wave survey. We completed the 2023 one, and we're in the middle of data collection for the 2025 survey. These slides are available through Carol, and a couple of things of note. Lots more information on our webpage, and we also have a beta data explorer. So it's a visualization tool / querying tool to kind of do some less sophisticated, kind of the simpler things, so that we can focus data requests on more sophisticated items. This allows users to correctly apply the weights, can kind of answer pretty basic questions. Our program tool is pretty similar to others. We're specific to the 4-county region around Seattle. We're seeking a regionally representative sample data set. We do use address-based sampling. We have extensive representation of people and places with a pretty complex sampling protocol. And then we do post-processing to clean as well as weight the data. We do still have a focus on weekday, even though we do collect data with smartphone and up to 7 days. So we have some information on the weekend, similar to what Joe showed you with his chart. And then, of course, given that this is a household survey of residents, we recognize that we're excluding other types of travels like visitors, externals, and commercial. And we're kind of in the middle of thinking about how do we add a visitor component based on requests from our ports as well as our elected leaders. But that's something still kind of in the works at the brainstorming stage. I think all of you have some familiarity with this. A lot of data can be collected in our household travel survey, the 5 Ws, lots of different planning and policy related questions, some of them that we didn't know we really had a focus on until relatively recently. EV charging is a new thing. Telecommuting has really pulled into focus since COVID. So a lot of data that kind of complements other things like counts and big data from passively collected devices. But this is pretty central to us. And one of the reasons I think many of you know is that household travel surveys generally are able to connect directly observed demographics, a whole variety of them, to many different types of activities, behaviors that allow us to analyze for a variety of planning purposes. So we keep adding to this list. We just recently added some questions on disability as well as sexuality to complement other demographics. And then this year, we have more of a refinement of our telecommuting questions to help us possibly refine and further develop our analytics as well as modeling on that front. So why did we go towards what's termed a recurrent survey? So there are some big kind of problems that we saw. I joined PSRC 10 years ago, just as we wrapped up our 2014, 2015, the last big survey that we did. At the time, Billy Charlton was my boss, and he basically said, like, you know, it doesn't really work for us to be surveying every 6 to 10 years on this irregular basis. The data that we have can be a dozen years old by the time it gets to the end of its life. It doesn't really reflect what's going on. In addition to modeling, there were a lot of kind of interest in a variety of travel and travel-related types of things. At the time, autonomous vehicles was a big topic. We didn't really have any data on that. There were still, you know, a lot of interest, not compared to today, but still interest on things like telework as a management tool for travel. And so being unable to have really up-to-date data for our models and being unable to monitor these trends have been a pain point. Every time we do something every 6 to 10 years, there's a lot of reinventing the wheel from many different perspectives. These translate into these overhead costs, issuing RFP, figuring out what we did last time. How do we try to keep things the same so that we can make comparisons while we're incorporating changes that has happened in the last 6 to 10 years? Doing a lot of kind of peer reviews of like what others have been doing. And then kind of living with some of those inconsistencies when we do get the data, which makes some of the comparisons difficult. Not to mention also these overhead costs means that we have to find staff time, even if you're using consultants, which everybody does. You have to be able to kind of find the expertise for people to have the management piece and some of the modeling and kind of analytical piece. And then lastly, it's what many people don't think of, but when you're managing one of these projects, one of the most difficult things with these big surveys every so often is that it's hard to find the budget. It's not like we have a piggy bank that we can stash away a little bit every year so that we can get a big pot. We have to have these ability to convince decision makers, many of whom weren't elected or around for the last time, so they don't really get to see the value in the data, or it's a lot of kind of re-education. So having these budget challenges really meant that we weren't able to keep things regular because sometimes we just weren't able to kind of come up with the money when we think we need to have a survey and things get delayed plus or minus 1 or 2 years. It's not uncommon. And so for us, ever since we started doing our surveys, and for us is doing it every 2 springs. So in the odd years, we do our data collection in the spring. We've been able to kind of set expectations for all sorts of internal and external stakeholders. We have a timeline of delivery. We have a timeline of findings that we report to a lot of people internally through our committees and boards. our elected officials are almost constantly hearing about different uses of our data. If they have some questions about various aspects of it, it's not uncommon for us to pick something from what's available in the data. So there is this constant education and dialogue about using something that is useful for us. We also have a lot of partners within our region, some of whom do make purchases for add-on samples. So previously, if people in these other jurisdictions were not able to come up with a budget for their uses, there's no telling when the next time is. With this, we usually say, okay, you're interested. What does your budget look like? We have conversations with them. And then if they're able to kind of join us, great. If they're not, we tell them, well, do what you can in the next couple of years to see what your budget is like. And then we're coming around again in 2 years. So that has worked pretty well in the last few cycles with some of the larger jurisdictions buying in. In-house at PSRC, we've been able to maintain a lot of institutional knowledge, not just from the project management's perspective, but we have a lot of in-house capability to do a variety of data processing, developing pipelines for our modeling and our analytical work. We've been developing tools that allow us to more easily access this, and it's kind of stay fresh in people's minds in terms of like, how do we use this data, the complexities of it, and how do we think about changes that we want to adapt while balancing it out with consistencies that we want for a kind of longitudinal set of data set. And then lastly, this budget thing has been really useful. So we basically have a survey for every biennium budget. There is a dedicated line for it. The people that make decisions on our budget regularly sees our data and uses about it. And so there's a continuous dialogue about how this feeds into our work and how our work kind of benefits from this resource. Just a few other kind of considerations. For us, the contracting has been a relatively straightforward thing. We issue one RFP for a multi-year program. After each survey, we have an option to either terminate or we continue with the next year's. There's relative good cost savings in terms of time and money to not have to issue RFP every single time if things work out. But there's also some safeguards that we have some freedom to kind of explore other options if things do not work out. As I kind of mentioned, we've kind of been able to take the advantage of the cycle to collect data, refine, develop, get our materials out, and then kind of consider how that fits in with a multi-year database and to be able to create support for this infrastructure with a variety of automation and programming. And then the last point is really about standardization within our agency, but also across with other folks. Joe has joined us and a few other agencies from around the country, including the Bay Area, San Diego, the Twin Cities, New York City. Folks that are actively doing a lot of travel survey and activity-based modeling, kind of looking into how we can kind of share resources in terms of looking at comparing data, but also various types of tools from data visualization, data processing, as well as kind of modeling. So that is kind of like a big kind of discussion topic. I'm going to spend just the rest of this time very quickly with you all in terms of some of the uses. I won't dive into the models specifically, just to mention that in our region, we have a travel model that's activity-based called Soundcast. We have a bunch of submodels. I think we call them baby casts. So in 2023, the city of Bellevue did an add-on with our survey program and to get some data to kind of help calibrate their submodel. Pierce County has a submodel, and they are a partner in 2025. They're collecting and oversampled for their model, and then use this with our land use model as well. I'll mention that with modeling, we've been able to combine multiple years of data when it's appropriate. So before the pandemic, we were doing some light re-estimation using 2017 and 2019 combined data. We've been doing some analyses recently on housing displacement, combining actually 2019, 2021, and 2023 data with various kind of modeling mechanism to kind of account for different time periods. So it's been really flexible for us on the modeling front. On the analytic front, this is not traditionally the main use of household travel survey, but it's becoming more and more important, especially since COVID. Everybody wants to know how things are changing, how things have changed. Lucky for us, we kind of started this with two really good base in 2017 and 2019 as a point of comparison for before COVID. And we're able to kind of monitor a variety of activities. So some examples, such as looking at VMT, there's several of these that I'll show you, but there's a lot more where this came from. Kind of monitoring regional trends, we're able to kind of look at this at the county level as well. That dip in 2021 is familiar in many of our charts. This is trips per resident, looking at how travel behavior, people traveled less, a quarter less in 2021, and they bounced back in 2023, but not back to the same level of travel in terms of the number of trips on an average weekday compared to before COVID. This is mode share. This is one that kind of drives home the points that while the amount of travel may fluctuate, so the size of the pie may become bigger or smaller, but there's a lot of inertia in terms of our transportation system and the behavior in terms of like the types of modes that people use. So with the exception with this little dip for the drive in 2021 and that little spike in walk in 2021, everything is fairly constant at the regional level. It's not at the sub-regional level, but kind of comes to show what the system view looks like when you zoom all the way out. Telecommute is a big thing, so kind of looking at ways in which people are working, whether at home, hybrid, or some form of fully remote, how that's been changing and likely be changing in 2025. We're able to kind of zoom into a specific year like this in 2023 to look at different geographies. This is by the home location. We have something similar for the work location that kind of shows that the spatial distribution of jobs really relate to whether people are able to and are actually doing remote work. Another set of trends, but this one a little bit different with the pandemic, heightened amount of delivery. We're working with some folks at the University of Washington and in New York in terms of looking at how we can estimate freight using a perspective of packages being received at the home end, so the types of induced demand on freight. And then what that spatial distribution looks like for a particular year, like in 2023. So this very last one is has a bunch of links in it. It represents a subset of the analysis work that we've done for our various committees and groups focus on different topics of interest. So we kind of tailor our analyses to different topics. Sometimes they're modal, sometimes they are specific to a land use related topic. They're all kind of intersected with different types of socio-demographics, so there's often an equity lens. And then as interested by our stakeholders, there's very often a geographic lens that allows us to kind of dive in, looking at how things are different in different places around our region. So I think I'm right on time. Happy to answer different questions. I think I just gave a bunch of teasers and happy to kind of follow up with anyone that's interested beyond now. So I'll just pause there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. Yeah, there's several questions. Go ahead, Peter.
Great. Thank you, Brian. This was really fascinating, and I really appreciate how you laid out the benefits of doing the recurrent survey. My question is there an aspect of, is there a longitudinal aspect to the recurrent survey? Are you looking at the same households or the same individuals year to year? Was there ever any thought to do that?
No and yes. So each one of these is cross-sectional. Each one of these are considered independent, even though we know we're, for certain segments, we are inviting people, the same people. And so it wouldn't surprise us if there are repeated observations of households. We just don't identify it. It's fairly easy, I think, to do a panel type where you follow the same household. We've done that in the past. There's a pretty long series from the late 80s into the early 2000s. I think something like 10 or 11 waves of it. That was a boom for researcher. It wasn't really used internally very much. And until I find a good use for it, I think we're going to leave that option open. I think it's possible, but I just don't think right now the amount of effort and cost that would be worth it until we have a real plan on how we would use it, probably for modeling purposes, but maybe other types of analytical purposes.